Hello and welcome. It is April 28th, 2026. And just 14 hours ago, 3I Atlas incinerated the surface of a passing near-Earth asteroid. NASA's Deep Space Network logged a thermal event from this interloper that has a 0.02% chance of being a natural occurrence. I'm talking about a highly coherent, directed thermal emission, a focused beam of extreme heat detected at exactly 4:18 UTC. Picture this, an object hurtling through the freezing void of our solar system, classified as a standard cometary nucleus, suddenly projecting a localized thermal cone at an ordinary C-type asteroid. It is literally roasting it, charring the ancient space rock like meat on a cosmic grill. Right now, as I speak, the surface temperature of that secondary body is spiking beyond 4,000 degrees Kelvin. Precision, that tight energy projection, that focused across the vacuum of space, that requires a complex mechanical process. That requires intention. Think about that for a moment. Let me put this in perspective. In all my years studying theoretical physics and astrophysics, I have never seen thermodynamics behave this way in a vacuum without a primary stellar body or a manufactured power source. The conventional explanation is that comets outgas. They emit water vapor and dust when warmed by the sun. They absolutely do not fire directed heat waves at specific targets. But the numbers are unambiguous. NASA's James Webb Space Telescope, specifically utilizing its highly sensitive NIRCam instrument, captured the raw infrared signature. The probability of a random, naturally occurring solar reflection bouncing off the icy surface of 3I Atlas and hitting that exact asteroid with such concentrated, sustained intensity, the mathematical odds are exactly 1 in 8.4 billion. The physics here is intriguing because heat naturally dissipates in space. It radiates spherically in all directions. It does not stay confined in a tight 3-degree cylindrical column over a massive distance of 150,000 kilometers. Imagine taking a simple magnifying glass to a dry leaf on a bright sunny day, focusing the sunlight down to a tiny burning point. Now imagine doing that without the sun, without the glass, and in the absolute freezing zero of deep space. That is exactly what 3I Atlas just did. The implications are profound. If this is an entirely natural phenomenon, our standard models of cometary composition and thermodynamic behavior are fundamentally broken. We will have to rewrite entire textbooks on astrophysics. But what if our model is simply incomplete? What if the universal assumption that 3I Atlas is just a wandering rock is the single biggest mistake in the history of modern astronomy? The clock is ticking. Observatories around the globe are currently scrambling to reposition their mirrors. The energy output from the object is not decreasing, it is mathematically stabilizing. This is the exact kind of data that challenges our deepest assumptions. We are watching an impossible event unfold in real time. The scientific community is now holding its breath as the numbers pour in daily. And that is just the beginning. The real mystery starts now. Before we speculate, examine the evidence. What exactly is 3I Atlas? It was formally cataloged on November 12, 2025, an interstellar interloper tracking on a hyperbolic trajectory. At first glance, it appeared as a typical rogue comet, a standard icy wanderer from beyond our local art cloud. But its differentiator was immediately obvious to astrophysicists worldwide. Its mass density calculation yielded an astonishing 33 billion tons packed into a remarkably small radius, giving it a specific gravity closer to depleted uranium than frozen water, and standard silica dust. That alone was highly anomalous and entirely unprecedented. But what happened next transcends simple anomalies. Look at this data point. On April 24, 2026, at precisely 14:22 UTC, the object approached asteroid 2011 AG5. At a distance of exactly 240 million kilometers from Earth, the incident officially began. This is exactly where the standard laws of thermodynamics and physics break down. NASA's James Webb Space Telescope detected an abrupt, massive thermal bloom using its sensitive mid-infrared instrument. ESA's Hera spacecraft observatory independently verified this sudden energetic discharge using its thermal infrared imager. The Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array in Chile cross-referenced the event using its high-frequency Band 7 receivers. Same result. 3 independent sources, different methodologies. Identical conclusion. 3I Atlas was actively projecting heat. Pause and realize what this means. We are not talking about a diffuse, naturally glowing gas cloud. The thermal emission was a tightly focused cylinder of pure energy, actively tracking the tumbling asteroid's movement with a mechanical precision maintained continuously within 0.03 degrees. Wait until you hear what happened next. The event did not just stop at a single burst. It escalated rapidly. First, on April 25th, the initial targeted action occurred. The asteroid's outer surface temperatures spiked by 800 degrees Kelvin in a localized circular patch exactly 4 kilometers wide. Then, just 12 hours later, Action 2 commenced. A secondary beam, pulsing at exact 23-second intervals, began intensely charring the ancient space regolith. The heavy silicates on the asteroid literally began to rapidly melt, transforming directly into a smooth, reflective glass. Think of it like a giant industrial laser meticulously etching heavy metal on a factory floor. In simpler terms, directed kinetic energy was being applied to physically alter the chemical composition of the target rock. Imagine looking at the main instrument display and seeing a frozen chunk of space ice acting exactly like a deep space blowtorch. The numbers are absolutely definitive. A natural cometary outgassing event has a 99.8% statistical probability of spreading randomly. Yet, this intense thermal beam remained flawlessly locked onto the rapidly rotating target asteroid. This should not be possible, but the telemetry data undeniably confirms it. Now Action 3. By yesterday, April 27th, at 21:14 UTC, the beam's overall intensity shifted again. Advanced spectroscopy readings from Hubble's Wide Field Camera 3 conclusively showed that the intense charring process was actively releasing heavy metallic signatures, vaporized elements that shouldn't exist in this temperature regime on a standard C-type asteroid. We are specifically talking about immense clouds of vaporized titanium and raw vanadium. When you carefully examine the incoming data, the sheer energy required to continuously vaporize solid titanium at that distance is staggering. You have to ask yourself, how is an inert block of frozen ice miraculously generating the thermal equivalent of a massive multi-terawatt industrial furnace? Even Dr. Avi Loeb at Harvard University stated that our natural thermal conduction models absolutely cannot explain a targeted, sustained energy transfer of this massive magnitude. When someone at that elite level publicly questions the foundational physics of an event, we urgently need to pay very close attention. Let me put this in proper perspective. The mechanical precision required to maintain a continuous thermal lock on a tumbling space asteroid while simultaneously traveling at a blistering 87.63 kilometers per second is mathematically staggering. The statistical probability of random cosmic radiation lensing perfectly to create this exact sustained thermal effect, roughly 1 in 4.7 billion. The conventional, textbook scientific explanation is completely, utterly useless here. And the clock is ticking as the charred surface of the unfortunate asteroid continues to violently cook. The underlying chemical composition of the expanding vapor cloud is changing. Every single 45 seconds, the massive thermal emission from 3I Atlas pulses. It is highly methodical. It is frighteningly relentless. What genuinely strikes me about this ongoing phenomenon is the sheer, unwavering stability of the intense thermal projection. Everyone assumes standard comets are just dirty, frozen snowballs slowly disintegrating while bathing in the warm solar wind. The incoming hard data strongly suggests otherwise. We currently have over 12,000 officially cataloged near-Earth objects and comets safely stored in our global databases. In roughly 4 million years of advanced cometary observation, orbital modeling, and scientific history, we have never once seen an object literally reach out and physically scorch another celestial body. But hold on, it gets worse. The raw thermal data is truly just the absolute surface of the massive mystery, because while the global telescopes were deeply focused on the intense heat, a different set of instruments detected exactly what was happening underneath the burned rock. And that is just anomaly 4. What comes next is infinitely more shocking. The real mystery starts right now. The intense charring was not just randomly destructive, it was deliberately leaving something highly specific behind. When you examine the data from a purely astrophysical perspective, the fundamental laws of thermodynamics dictate exactly how energy dissipates. In the vacuum of space, heat radiates spherically. It follows the inverse square law, spreading outwards and rapidly losing intensity. But then, on April 28, 2026, at precisely 8:14 UTC, something changed. NASA's Deep Space Network detected a new thermal anomaly from 3I Atlas. The focused thermal cone did not just maintain its intense heat, it actively contracted. The beam narrowed, concentrating its energy output into a tighter, hotter column. This was not in any of our predictive models. This was not predicted by any known cometary behavior. This changes absolutely everything. Think about it this way. Imagine standing in New York City with a standard handheld flashlight trying to boil a cup of water sitting in Los Angeles. That is the level of intense thermal confinement we are witnessing. Here, the physics here is intriguing because to prevent that immense heat from dissipating across 150,000 kilometers of frozen vacuum, you need a containment mechanism. You need a magnetic envelope or a highly advanced optical focusing array. Ice and standard silicate dust simply cannot perform this function. Pause here for a moment. An inert body is actively suppressing the natural dispersion of heat. Let me quantify this for you. The statistical probability of a rogue comet naturally generating a localized 4000 degree Kelvin hotspot, let us generously say 0.1%. The probability of that same comet projecting that heat in a confined linear cylinder, roughly 0.0001%. The probability of it simultaneously tracking a tumbling, rotating target asteroid traveling at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. Mathematically negligible. Both of these impossible events occurring simultaneously in the exact same celestial object. If you multiply those numbers, you arrive at odds worse than winning the global lottery every single day for 10 consecutive lifetimes. That is a 1 in 14.8 trillion chance. In over 4 million years of cometary observation, we have never seen this exact combination. The numbers are definitive. Look at this data point. At T-minus 36 hours, the target asteroid was rotating normally. At T-minus 24 hours, the surface rock began to melt into a hyper-smooth glass under the relentless thermal barrage. At T-minus 12 hours, the molecular structure of the asteroid fundamentally changed. Right now, as I am speaking, the clock is ticking, and the ablation process is accelerating. The raw energy output required to sustain this action is equivalent to the entire electrical grid of North America, firing continuously from a rock floating in deep space. Even the senior astrophysics team at Caltech, who traditionally remain highly skeptical of anomalous data, immediately requested emergency telescope time. When an institution at that prestigious level abruptly halts its scheduled cosmic surveys to focus entirely on a single thermal event, we need to pay very close attention. They recognize what the telemetry is saying. From a thermodynamic standpoint, San I-Atlas is behaving less like a natural comet and significantly more like a massive automated industrial tool. Picture this scenario. If you could zoom out to a cosmic scale, looking down at our inner solar system, you would not see a simple rock passing by another rock. From Earth's perspective, this appears as an active, highly controlled engagement, a surgical strike across the void. The conventional explanation is natural outgassing causing friction, but what if that is entirely wrong? Everyone assumes standard comets are primitive, dead remnants of the early solar system. The data suggests otherwise. The precision here is truly remarkable. ESA's Gaia spacecraft, which maps the precise positional data of millions of stars, diverted its attention to measure the optical glow of the burning asteroid. It confirmed that the thermal beam is hitting the exact rotational axis of the target. It is not just randomly scorching the surface, it is striking the exact mathematical center of the asteroid's mass. This defies our models. The physics here completely breaks down. A natural cometary outburst happens randomly, violently, and chaotically. This action is methodically calm, surgically precise, and geometrically perfect. Consider the implications. If 3I Atlas is utilizing a magnetic field to confine the thermal energy, where is the dynamo? Comets do not possess molten iron cores. They do not generate massive magnetospheres capable of shielding and directing terawatts of pure heat. To achieve this, the object would require internal mechanics. It would require an internal architecture specifically designed to route, focus, and expel energy. In all my years studying the deep cosmos, this is the kind of data that forces us to completely reevaluate our place in the universe. Wait, the thermal emission just spiked again. Impossible, but confirmed 3 times by 3 separate observatories. The target asteroid surface is now completely liquefied in that specific 4-kilometer sector. The molten rock is swirling, reacting to the continued heat. But that is just the beginning. The real mystery starts now. What fascinates me about this data is not just the impossible heat, it is what the heat is actively doing to the molten surface. Because while the world's greatest minds were completely distracted by the sheer impossibility of a comet firing a thermal beam, the James Webb Space Telescope's near-infrared camera quietly recorded the chemical aftermath of the burn. The telescopes are pointed, the detectors are live, the data stream is active, and the consensus is rapidly shifting. What I'm about to show you in the next phase of this analysis is the exact telemetry that prompted an immediate classified briefing at NASA headquarters. Hold on, it gets worse. We assumed the extreme heat was merely destructive. We assumed it was just randomly melting the asteroid into a puddle of glowing slag. But what if the heat was merely a tool? What if the intense charring was actually a highly complex manufacturing process? This is the data that changes everything. This specific revelation absolutely proves that the natural universe behaves in ways so we do not yet possess the capacity to truly comprehend. We are not alone in observing this cosmic anomaly, and the final evidence is terrifyingly clear. I must ask you to prepare yourself for the absolute truth, because this cannot be hidden. Everything I've shown you, the 4 anomalies, the 1 in 14.8 trillion statistical impossibilities, the intense authority concerns, all documented by this morning. But we are not done. On April 28, 2026, at precisely 11:30 UTC, a completely new observation team detected something else, something not in any prior data stream, something that absolutely was not supposed to exist. NASA's spectroscopic sensors monitored the targeted asteroid as the massive thermal beam finally shut off. The molten surface began to rapidly cool in the freezing vacuum. But it did not solidify randomly. The extremely heavy metals, the vaporized titanium and vanadium, recrystallized into a vast, geometrically perfect hexagonal grid, exactly 4 kilometers wide. The signal repeated Earth's Arecibo message back, but physically etched into the rock with profound structural modifications. Let that sink in. The intense heat was not mere destruction. It was an automated, cosmic 3D printer. The object did not just scorch the asteroid, it deliberately manufactured a massive structural foundation right on the surface. If this is somehow a bizarre natural crystalline formation, then our entire understanding of rapid cooling metallurgy is completely wrong. If this is a natural phenomenon, then chemistry itself is fundamentally broken. But here is what keeps astrophysicists awake tonight. If this is an artificially directed manufacturing process, then a highly advanced intelligence is currently building something massive just 240 million kilometers away from Earth. Within merely 2 hours, NASA did something entirely unprecedented. They initiated a closed-door emergency meeting with the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, instantly classifying the raw optical feeds. In my 40 years of studying theoretical physics, an immediate global data blackout has happened very rarely. That alone tells you the immense magnitude of what we are actively dealing with. And we are not finished, because the data I'm about to show you in the final section reveals the true horror. This is exactly where the situation gets truly inexplicable. The most terrifying part of this specific anomaly is still approaching us now. Let us establish what we know with absolute certainty. First, a directed thermal beam melted an asteroid. Second, the mathematical impossibility is completely irrefutable. Third, NASA officially verified the structural modifications. Fourth, the visual feeds are actively classified. These are not speculative theories. These are documented observations. But one question remains unanswered. One question that the international scientific consensus carefully avoids: what is actively powering the non-gravitational manufacturing process? Because the answer determines absolutely everything. If this is natural, then our physical laws require total revision. If this is artificial, then our cosmic isolation is officially broken. And if this is an infrastructural deployment, then an unprecedented arrival is actively commencing right outside our atmosphere. There is no middle ground here. One of these is our reality, and the clock is running right now. As you watch this, the telescope is collecting data. Every single hour brings new observations. In exactly 48 hours, we will have the critical orbital telemetry. The deep telescopes are pointed, the thermal detectors are live, The data stream is active. SAN-I Atlas is currently building. The massive structural anomaly is completely ongoing. And whatever it is actively attempting to rapidly construct, Earth is permanently watching now.